Good day everyone, my name is Major Ukyas, and for this video, I will discuss the different definitions of emotional and behavioral disorders. So the contents of this report is first, definition of emotional and behavioral disorder. Second, IDEA definition of serious emotional disturbance. Third is CCBD definition of emotional and behavioral disorders. And fourth and the last one, classification of emotional and behavioral disorders. So first, let us talk about the definition of emotional and behavioral disorder. So the definition that had the most impact on special education in the United States was written by L.E. Bower on 1957 according to Zoines 2002. However, Bower's definition was criticized for its vagueness and subjectivity. Special education teachers asked for more specific indicators of satisfactory, normal, inappropriate, and pervasive interpersonal relationships. Later on, Bower's definition was revised and adopted by the U.S. Department of Education using the term seriously emotionally disturbed. So while a number of definitions have been proposed, psychologists and special education experts to date have not agreed on a consistent and universal definition of emotional and behavioral disorders for the following reasons. It is according to Howard 2003. So first reason is disordered behavior is social construct. There is no clear agreement as to the criteria and parameters of normal and adaptive behavior and good mental health. Second reason, different theories of emotional disturbance use concepts and terminology that do not present a clear meaning of the condition. So the third reason is measuring and interpreting disordered behavior across time and setting is difficult, exact, and costly endeavor. The fourth reason is cultural influence, expectation, and norms across ethnic and cultural groups are often quite different. The fifth reason is frequency and intensity of disorder behavior is difficult to measure and control in view of that the fact children behave inappropriate in times. The last reason, disordered behavior sometimes occurs in conjunctions with other disabilities such as mental retardation and learning disabilities. So there are three factors to consider in determining if a child is emotionally disturbed. First is intensity, second is pattern, and third is duration. So what is intensity? So intensity refers to the severity of child's problem. This factor is the easiest to identify if one is guided with the following question. How does it get in the way of the child's or society's goals? How much does it draw attention from others? Next is the pattern. So what is the pattern? Pattern means the time that the problem occurs. Do problem occur only during the school day, only during math class, science class, at home, at bedtime? Answers to these questions may yield very helpful diagnostic and remediation information. And the last factor is duration. So what is duration? Duration refers to the length of the time the child's problem has been present. This implies that continuous observation has to be made. Some special educators require a 3-month duration before they suggest that the child has an emotional or behavioral problem. So let us proceed to the IDEA definition of serious emotional disturbance. This is according to Howard 2003. The IDEA definition clearly specifies 3 conditions that must met: chronicity, severity, and difficulty in school. It has 5 types of problems or characteristics that a child with serious emotional disturbance exhibits. So the IDEA, or the Individuals with Disability Education Act of 1997, the Public Law on Special Education in America, defines serious emotional disturbance as, first, a condition exhibiting on one or more of the following characteristics over a long period of time, or the chronicity, and to mark degree or severity, which adversely affect educational performance, which is difficulty in school. So the first definition of IDEA has 5 types of problems or characteristics that a child with serious emotional disturbance exhibit. So first is an inability to learn, which cannot be explained by intellectual, sensory, and health factors. Second, an inability to build interpersonal relationship with peers and teachers. Third is inappropriate types of behavior and feelings under normal circumstances. Fourth, a general pervasive mood or unhappiness or depression. Or the fifth one is a tendency to develop physical symptoms of fears associated with personal problems. The second definition of IDEA is the term includes children who are schizophrenic or autistic. The term does not include the children who are socially maladjusted unless it is determined that they are seriously emotionally disturbed. And now let us discuss the CCBD definition of emotional and behavioral disorders. The CCBD definition of emotional and behavioral disorders focuses on the characteristic and special education needs for children and youth with emotional and behavioral disorders. All other proposed definitions agree that the behavior of the children with emotional and behavioral differs markedly or extremely and chronically or over time from present social or cultural norms. Emotional and behavioral disorders is the disability characterized by, first, behavioral or emotional responses in school programs so different from appropriate age, cultural or ethnic norms that they adversely affect educational performance. So educational performance includes the development and demonstration of academic, social, vocational, and personal. So such disabilities are first, more than temporary expected response to stressful events in the environment. Second is consistently exhibited in two different settings, at least one of which is school-related. And third is unresponsive to direct intervention in general education of the child's condition in such that general education intervention would be difficult. So the second characteristic of emotional and behavioral disorders is emotional and behavioral disorders can coexist with disability. Third is the category may include children or youth with schizophrenic disorders, affective disorders, anxiety disorders, or other sustained disturbance of conduct or adjustment when they adversely affect educational performance in accordance with section. Additional factors are considered in assessing who is expected to be emotionally disturbed according to Howard 2003. First factor to be considered is the rate. Rate refers to the frequency of occurrence of behavior per standard unit of time. Example, stand up 6 times every 10 minutes. Most children cry, get into fights with other children, and sulk from the time to time, yet they are not emotionally disturbed. The primary difference between children with behavioral disorder and other children is frequency with which the behavior occurs. Emotionally disturbed children, unlike other children, do the undesirable behavior too often and engage in adaptive behavior too infrequently. The last additional factor to be considered is latency. It refers to the time that elapses between the opportunity to respond and the beginning of the behavior. The latency of the child's behavior may be long, that is upon prodding of the teacher. He or she withholds an inappropriate behavior, thinks about appropriate behavior suggested by the teacher, and complies with the teacher's request all within a span of time, usually a few several minutes. On the other hand, the latency of the child's behavior may be very short. That is, he or she may immediately scream, throw a tantrum, hit others at the slightest provocation, frustration, instead of taking time to consider more appropriate behaviors. Emotional and behavioral disorders fall under 4 systems of classification. First is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder, or DSM-4. It is the classification published by the American Psychiatric Association in 1994. The second is Quies Statistical Classification. Third is the classification derived from the direct observation and measurement. And fourth and the last one, the classification based on the degree of the severity of the disordered which is according to Hayward 2003. So let us first talk about the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So the DSM-4 is an elaborate clinical classification system consisting of 230 separate diagnostic categories or levels to identify the various types of disordered behavior as observed by the psychiatrists, psychologists, mental health personnel, and other clinicians in their regular practice. And now let us proceed to the second system of classification, which is Qui's statistical classification. Qui and his colleagues collected a wide range of data of hundreds of children with emotional and behavioral disorders. They asked parents and teachers to accomplish rating forms and questionnaires on the children's behavior and life histories. The statistical analysis of data revealed 4 clusters of the traits and behavior among children with emotional and behavioral disorders. First is conduct disorder. It's characterized by disobedience, being disruptive, getting into fights, being bossy, and temper tantrums. Second is anxiety withdrawal, sometimes called anxiety disorder, is manifested by social withdrawal, anxiety, depression, feeling of inferiority, guilt, shyness, and unhappiness. Third is immaturity, shows in short attention span, extreme passivity, daydreaming, preference of younger playmates, and clumsiness. Fourth and the last one, socialized aggression, is marked by truancy, gang membership, theft, and feeling of pride and belonging to a delinquent subculture. Aggression and acting out are major characteristics of Qui's conduct disorder and socialized aggression categories. A significant finding in the study showed that the above clusters of behavior appear in groups rather than singly. Thus, there is a higher incidence of conduct disorder in child who shows anxiety withdrawal, immaturity, and socialized aggression. Let us talk about the third system of classification, which is the direct observation and measurement. So, 5 dimensions of the child's display of the disordered behavior are observed, measured, and analyzed. First is the frequency. It indicates the rate at which the behaviors occur and how often a particular behavior is performed. Normally, disobedience, temper tantrums, shyness, clumsiness, and unhappiness are displayed by most children. However, a child with emotional and behavioral disorders engage in the undesirable behavior most of the time and shows normal behavior less often. Second is duration. It is a measure of the length and amount of time a child exhibits a disordered behaviors. The length and amount of time spent in the undesirable behaviors is longer and may last for an hour or more. Normal children display temper tantrums for no more than a few minutes. Third is the topography. It refers to the physical shape or form of behavior. For example, running a race and walking each has its own topography. Although the legs are used in both motor activities, running has its own shape or topography that differs from walking. The topography of the behavior displayed by children with emotional and behavioral disorders deviate from the normal. They are maladaptive, bizarre, or dangerous to the child himself and others. So the fourth one is the magnitude. It refers to the intensity of the displayed behavior. For example, the magnitude of one's aggressive behavior may have high magnitude or intensity so that the whole class is affected. A person who threatens to commit suicide by jumping off a tall building or hostage a victim displays a disruptive behavior or high intensity. The police, fire department, and people in the community all get affected by the suicide incident. So the fifth and the last one is stimulus control. It refers to the inability to select an appropriate response to stimulus. The child has difficulty in selecting the correct behavior in a social situation. In the class where all the students are expected to listen while the teacher explains the lessons, the child with emotional and behavioral disorder engages in disruptive behavior such as shouting, hitting seatmates, and similar inappropriate response to the class activity. Now let us proceed to the fourth and the last system of classification, which is the degree of severity. Studies conducted by Oslon, Algozen, and Semid in 1980, cited in Howard 2003, indicate that emotional and behavioral disorders can be mild and severe. The children who respond positively to therapy and intervention have a mild level or degree of emotional and behavioral disorders. They can attend regular classes and work successfully with the regular and special education teachers and the guidance counselor. Those who have the severe emotional and behavioral disorders require intense treatment and intervention. That's all. Thank you for watching and listening. I hope you learned something from my report. God bless and have a good day ahead.